macho to shed a tear or anything like that. Tough guy crime writer. But I might, you know. I've been coming to the Mysterious Bookstore since the very beginning. You know, my first book, A Cool Breeze on the Underground. These folks in Otto very kindly took me in when I was selling no books. And I mean literally no books. Tonight, this afternoon, before I got here, I think I signed a couple of hundred books before this even started. You know, and Otto and I were down in the basement reminiscing about the old days. I can remember coming here, my first time I'd been in an event the previous day with Lawrence Block. And he sat beside me for 2 hours, and I was too shy to introduce myself or say hello. He was one of my biggest heroes when I was still a PI working in Times Square in Hell's Kitchen. I was reading Matthew Scudder novels, you know, and thinking maybe someday I could do something like this. And I was sitting next to Mr. Block, and I couldn't bring myself to say hello. And the next day I was in Mysterious Bookstore, and I noticed that he was going to come the following day. And I left Otto my credit card number and asked, would he get a book signed for me by Lawrence Block, which I still have on my shelves, of course. And so it's meaningful for me to be here tonight. I guess I should talk about the Danny Ryan series and the trilogy and maybe give you a little insight into that. I won't talk for long, but I will take questions. I started Danny Ryan 30 years ago now. I remember writing the first sentence, and sitting on the beach watching a woman come out of the water, and that sentence didn't change over the course of 30 years, which is pretty strange. Why did it take me 30 years to write 3 books? Well, because I was writing 20 some odd other books during that time, including some fairly hefty books about the Mexican drug trade, which some of you might be familiar with. Power of the Dog, the Cartel, the Border, and other things. But, you know, the real reason I think was a crisis of confidence over those years. What I set out to do was to try to write a modern crime epic. If my voice starts failing, just let me know. I've been talking all day. To try to write a modern crime epic that you could read as such, with no reference to the classics whatsoever, but at the same time that tracked and told the stories of the Aeneid, the Iliad, the Odyssey, and some Greek tragic dramas. Because I really feel that we haven't invented anything in my beloved crime fiction genre, and this is kind of the temple of that. We haven't invented any new themes in 2,000 years. We still write about honor and dishonor and loyalty and disloyalty and love and lust and hatred and greed, and even, I hope, redemption. And I found all of those in the Greek classics when I first read the Iliad. Here's the man. Hey, Otto. I was just saying a big thank you to Mysterious Bookstore for hanging in with me all these years.
I think we're the one thanking you for being here.
So anyway, I set out to write those books, and can't look at Otto.
Started early.
And it, yeah, it took some time. You know, I think back on it now. When I wrote that first sentence, my now adult and married son was a toddler. We were poor. I was doing any number of things to make a living, doing private investigation, mostly by that time out in California, directing Shakespeare productions in the summers at Oxford, and working as a photographic safari guide in Kenya and China. Well, you laugh now, so where were you then? But, you know, I set this task, and it's been the work of a lifetime. And then I'd fail at it. You know, I'd write some of the Danny Ryan saga, and it just wasn't working. I wasn't finding the modern equivalents to those ancient stories that really worked to make them fully contemporary and fully human and fully within our genre. And so I'd start to write the second book, and I'd write bad stuff, dumb stuff, you know, and then set it down like, either this is a bad idea or it's a really good idea. I'm just not good enough to do it. And I really think that was the truth. You know, I think that it took a degree of maturity, although I've rarely been accused of maturity on any level. I like to say that everything I used to get in trouble for in 8th grade, now they pay me to do. Right? Daydream, talk dirty, you know, all that stuff. Now, you know, daydream. I used to get in trouble for daydreaming. Now people ring me up and say, can we buy your daydreams? At first I say no, and then they tell me how much, and then I say yes. So the second book was difficult, you know, and I finally sort of, I think, broke the back of it. And, but I kept putting it down, and then COVID happened, and a number of things happened. I left home when I was 17 for a lot of reasons. Left Rhode Island, there was nothing there for me. Rhode Island was requesting that I leave home as well. I think the expression was someplace you can't come home on weekends, was the way it was phrased to me. I went to the University of Nebraska, where I certainly could not go home on weekends, and wandered the world. You know, and it's funny how little self-awareness you can have. I was deep into writing the third book before I realized the parallels between Danny and me that are in book 2. Wandering, in my case, not only the country but the world, with first an infant and then a toddler in tow. My wife and little son and I lived in hotels for 3 years while I was doing investigative work in California and elsewhere. You know, you never knew how long a case was going to last. Didn't want to be separated from my family, so we just would pick up and go. You know, and a case could last for months, it could last for days, I never knew. And we lived that way, and I never realized the parallels with Danny, who, you know, is wandering in book 2, trying to find a place to set his feet, trying to find some stability, and maybe a little success in life, which eluded me for a long time. I've said it before, I was an overnight success in my 50s. Long night, man, long Arctic kind of night. And then book 3. I was totally in the tall grass in book 3, as my wonderful editor, Jen Corral, can tell you. And didn't know what to do with it. And then COVID happened. And then a few years prior to that, my mom in Rhode Island started to fail, which is natural. I think a lot of us have been through that. And so we started to go, my wife and I started to go to Rhode Island more and more often, and for longer periods of time as was required. And I fell in love with the place again in ways that I could see it, in ways that I couldn't see it as a child and as a teenager. A place that I thought it rejected me and thrown me away. But I started to love it again, and I started to love the people again. And for some reason, that allowed me to finish these books. I can't quite articulate it, but it allowed me to see that place in a more mature way, in a more compassionate way, maybe to see these characters in a more compassionate way, that I felt that I could get closer to them. I've known Danny all my life. I grew up with the Dannys of the world. I played hockey with them and surfed and went to the bars and did other things with them. But I think I started seeing it in a more compassionate way. And I think, you know, I left Rhode Island to go back to California, and 2 weeks later, my mother died during COVID. There was no funeral. We couldn't go back. And I think probably some of you have experienced this. I think that when you lose your parents, you start to see your role in a different way. You know, that all of a sudden I had been a son and a father, but now I was no longer a son, but a father. And I think that influenced book 3 a lot, to talk about Danny's relationship with his son and how important that was. I won't tell you too much about the ending of the book, but there's an epilogue, and it was Jen who pointed it out to me, that a wife appears in the epilogue, and I unconsciously or subconsciously wrote not the fictional character's name, but my wife's name in the draft that I actually sent to the publisher. Jen sent me a very kind note saying, I think you might have slipped you thing into here. So that's the evolution of these books. They're my life's work. I'm proud of finally having completed them. And it does feel like an ending to me. You know, there are other things that I want to do. I think some of you are aware of that in the political sphere, because what I fear very much is happening in this country, and that need a more immediate sort of address than is available in a novel. And I think for the foreseeable future, that's going to be my focus. But I thank you all so much for being here tonight. It means a lot to me. And I'll just open it up to questions now. Yeah.
If I might ask 3 questions. One is, what's your typical writing day? Number 2, what do you enjoy about going on tour to the bookstores? And 3, what don't you enjoy about tours?
Easy. My writing day, I'm afraid, sir, is very boring. I would love to say that I walk in fields of flowers and muses land on my shoulder and whisper nothings into my ears. That would be great, but it would be a lie. My working day is very, very steady. I get up around 4:45. I make a pot of coffee, I read the newspapers, and then I go to work until about 5:30 in the evening. Take breaks. You usually take a break and walk or run somewhere between 4 and 6 miles, or surf, depending on where we are at the time of the year. Second question, what do I enjoy about tours? This. Listen, every good material thing I have in life, sir, I owe to readers and to booksellers. Flat out, right? I've wanted this job since I was 6 years old. Didn't get it until I was in my 40s. Okay, not boo-hoo. I had a great time doing other things, right? So I'm very grateful for it. I treat it with respect, which means work your hours, suit up and show up. Doesn't get much more complicated than that. But also I'm aware when I go on tour and see y'all, right, what I owe you, which is everything. So it's great to come and say thank you and meet people. And please understand that my thank yous are sincere. What do I not like about the tours? Airports. The airports. That's it. They're soul killing. I can be in O'Hare Airport in existential despair. You know? But other than that, I like it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Last year when I met you, I told you about a hockey I wrote, John Brophy.
Yeah.
You, me, maybe Mike, and there were hockey fans here. But
Could you? You might need to speak up a little bit.
my question is, in City on Fire,
Yeah.
you have a walk-on character named Laframboise.
Yeah.
Pardon my French.
Yeah.
Was he named after Peter Laframboise, the Providence Reds player that you probably went to the games for the city in 1977? And you'll be the only one that's ever said that.
You are the only one who has never said that, and you are absolutely correct. Yeah, I grew up in Rhode Island, or some people would argue that, well, it was Rhode Island, but whether I grew up or not, debatable. And my dad used to take me to the Providence Reds, which were a minor league hockey team in this horrible arena that I still love. Didn't have plexiglass, it had chicken wire. Providence fans used to reach through the chicken wire and grab opposing players. And I saw a Providence crowd boo Snow White one night. No, honest to God. Between periods, they were pimping the ice capades, right? And Snow White's like flying around, and she falls and she breaks her ankle. I know, it's going to get funny in a second. So they're carrying her out on a stretcher. And the Providence crowd booed her. Learn to skate. You suck, Snow White. That's the kind of town I grew up in. So, but yes, absolutely correct. Yes. Anything else? Yes, sir.
Yeah, this isn't a question. I've read
Okay.
all your books, and I just
Oh,
want,
that was you.
I just want to thank you for so many hours of
Oh,
unbelievably great reading, entertainment, and insight into stuff. You're just the best ever, dude. And if you ever come back, you've earned your time off. If you decide to write another one, you'll be first in line. The best.
thank you very much. Any other compliments?
I have a question. for you.
Yes, sir. Knicks fan.
yeah.
Okay.
Power of the Dog
Yes, sir.
trilogy.
Yep.
I got the sense that it maybe wasn't intended to be a trilogy in the
Correct.
beginning,
Yes.
but you know, I'm just curious how the inspiration goes into and the research into the characters, because you know Arturo takes such a serious intent on making things right. So you know, anything you can speak to on
Sure.
that.
The gentleman was asking about the drug trilogy I did, which he quite correctly said was never intended to be a trilogy. I quit after the first book. Power of the Dog took me 6 years, and 3 years of that was research in Mexico and along the border, Brownsville area. When that book came out, nobody in the United States bought it. It did fairly well in Europe, but I had $37 in the bank after Power of the Dog. That's not why I quit. I quit because it made me so damn sad.
Yeah.
And but then I felt guilty, right? Because the drug wars went into a whole new phase, much more violent than we thought of in our worst nightmares. And I knew I could explain it to a fiction reading public here and in Europe, and I wasn't doing it. My agent used to call me up to suggest that I write the book that became The Cartel, and I would hang up on him. Or I'd pretend to be a pizza parlor. Pepperoni 40 minutes and I'd hang up. But finally, one morning, I don't know how, I don't know why, I woke up and I started typing the book that becomes Cartel. That's another 2.5 to 3 years. I quit again. I promised my wife, I promised my friends I would not go back to that world. My wife says, I don't know that I agree with her, but she said I was depressed after Cartel. And it, you know, you were so deep into that world. And the people that you were writing about and researching and talking to were dying on a fairly regular basis. So I quit and did some other things, you know, write surf books, you know, go surfing, something happy. Then 2015 came around. You can probably all do the math on that. And I heard so many outrageous lies and slanders against Mexicans, Mexican Americans, against people addicted to heroin, against immigrants. Again, I felt that, and this is immodest, but I felt I had an insight into that, into those worlds. And so, same thing, one morning there was no clear decision, sir. I just started writing a book that becomes The Border, right? Because, look, some of these people, I live near the border in California, in a little town. These are people that I serve on school boards with. I go to weddings and funerals with, birthday parties, you know, school events. These are people I love. And so for people to slander them and tell lies and call them murderers and thieves, not on my watch, not while I stay quiet. And so that became the third book. The research for it, I don't know what to tell you. It was years and years. It was first reading history, so a big believer in chronology. I wanted to base knowledge of Mexico, the drug wars, things I knew nothing about, you know, except drugs were everywhere when I was a kid, right? People shooting up in the boys' room, right? So, and then it was a matter of going out and talking to people. I started with San Diego street gangs, because they were the most easily accessible, but really not them, their families, because most of those kids were already dead. They've been recruited as hitmen for the cartel in Tijuana. So I was talking to the surviving families. And then cops, and then DEA people, until I built this network, that people I could talk to, but then also journalism and, just following the news and that kind of stuff. Did that answer the
Yes.
long-winded?
Yes.
Did that answer the question you
Yes,
asked?
and just want to say some of the best writing I've ever read. So.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Yes?
When you finish City of Ruins in 2022, the actual writing book?
I don't know. Is that right? Did I finish City of Ruins in 2022? I honestly, I'm not being coy. I don't recall.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is,
Yeah.
Accepting that this is the last book.
Yeah.
What have you done to fill that kind of creative void? That you've been doing this for so long.
Yeah. I don't feel retired yet. I have to tell you, because I'm doing this,
Right.
and then I'm doing the social media thing and the videos, and that's kept me pretty engaged. I mean, it's the same deal. I read 5 newspapers, but in depth, and probably 2 or 3 times a day now. Going back to that stuff so that I'm current. So it's been busy. I don't feel like I'm retired.
Will we see some short stories? Maybe.
Never say never. You never know. Yes, ma'am. Ellen, and then to you, sir.
So when I interviewed you for the Virginia Book Festival 5 years ago, I asked you if you, I said, how long did you think you were going to write? And you looked very surprised. And you said you've never given it any thought.
Right.
And you have given it some thought.
I have.
What happened? What did you do? What did you wake up one morning?
No, it was not. It was not a sudden decision. No, it was not. It was. Again, I think finishing this trilogy. Right.
But you finished it a while ago.
Yeah, I know. But I could see it coming. It felt like a homecoming. Gratitude had something to do with it. You know what? I mean, I've been so grateful for what I've been given. I know this sounds smarmy, but I mean it. That I think sometimes you need to know when to graciously get off the stage and make room for other people. Great writers coming up. See their names around here. But also, look, I'm not young. I know I look incredibly youthful. I know you're shocked at that.
And modest.
But there's only so much time and so much energy, right? And I think now that needs to be devoted elsewhere. So those things kind of all coming together, made this decision. And then I talked to my wife one morning. What do you think? I think it's time. And she said, yeah, I think it's time too. Yes.
It was a great segue to what I was going to ask you, because it was specifically, you've been such a great proponent of other authors. I mean, I got into Adrian McKinty because of you. And I read The Chain and The Island, and I've read all his Sean Duffy novels.
Yeah.
And
Great stuff.
And so, can you talk about some other authors that you are so happy about?
Listen, I'm always reluctant to give a list of things like this for fear of leaving someone out.
That's okay.
Because I'm tired and over-caffeinated. Lou Berney, T.J. Newman. Listen, I think that if I were to give a state of the genre address, I would say the genre is very strong. It's very strong. It's deep and it's widening. Okay? To include people who maybe weren't included 40 years ago as much.
Well, besides your social media, your Twitter follow is great to learn about new authors.
Yeah, and I try to keep
recommend everybody.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
read Lou Berney because of
Yeah.
you, and Drowning and Falling because
Yeah.
of you.
But look, that's what we should be doing, right? People did it for me, right? That said very kind things and gave me blurbs and all of that kind of thing. There's so many people, sort of the net half generation above me, that I owe a great deal to. So I think, and I don't know, maybe you guys, Otto, maybe you guys would agree with me. I think that the crime genre tends to be so collegial, maybe more than other genres or general literature, or whatever you want to call it. I think because for generations we were kind of slightly looked down upon. which I always liked. There was a French journalist one time who asked me, not in very friendly tone, which would shock you. He said, do you I'm not going to do the imitation. So, but do you think as a crime fiction writer you live in a literary ghetto? And I said, yes, I do. And I love my neighborhood and I love my neighbors. Yes.
You talked before a little bit about how you did work a lot of different jobs, early on, and how this kind of came about later on.
Yep.
And you mentioned crisis and confidence and things. I wanted to ask, in those early, years when you were kind of getting started and when you had lots of other responsibilities and other jobs, I guess how maybe you could give some insight about a bit about when that confidence came about and when you decided to kind of go for it and how you balanced all these things.
Yeah. Look, I was in my 20s living here as a street rat. I don't know if that expression means anything to you. I was working for a private detective agency, but I was out on the street, Times Square, Hell's Kitchen. This is back in the day. This is before Mickey Mouse, right? This is crack vials and, and the Upper West Side, Harlem, the Bronx. And I was making minor league dope buys. I was chasing runaways, trying to get to runaways before the pimps did. One of my job descriptions literally was bait. I would troll Times Square trying to get mugged, and they'd have a huge guy behind me, hopefully. If he wasn't at Dunkin' Donuts, who would jump in. It was like the rodeo. And then I decided, I'm not getting anything but older. I was having kind of a good time, but it wasn't getting me anywhere. And I went back to graduate. Anyway, I ended up teaching at Oxford, right? Summer programs, not at Oxford University. I'm not an Oxford doc. And one of the professors there said, you're always talking about writing a book. Why don't you do it? Which is a good question. Because at that point in time, I didn't think I could. Just didn't. I didn't think I had the talent. Didn't think I had the chops. Now I'm reading, as I alluded to before, Lawrence Block and Elmore Leonard, all of these great people. So a couple of months later, I'm in Africa, right? Another one of the jobs. And I had a malaria relapse and amoebic dysentery. I weighed 94 pounds. And I'm sitting at a fire one morning, because you get up well before dawn to get everything ready for the clients. And it's about 4 a.m, and I buy a fire, and I'm doing this rattling with the malaria. And I thought, damn, you better start. And I heard Joseph Wambaugh, the great Joseph Wambaugh, who's since become a friend, so great. And he had said when he was an LA murder cop that he wanted to be a writer and he was going to write 10 pages a day. And I thought, I can't do 10, but I think I can do 5. And so I went back to the tent and started writing on a yellow manuscript pad. 3 years later, I finished a book called A Cool Breeze on the Underground. 15 publishers turned it down. And including y'all. That's always fun to say. And while turning it down, I was writing the second book with the same character, because I just came to a decision that you have to be a little crazy, and you have to say the rest of the world is wrong and I'm right. And I was actually on a stakeout, seriously, when I got a phone call that a publisher had accepted the book. So my wife called me and said, would you answer your phone? I said, I can't, I'm on a stakeout, I'm supposed to be like looking at somebody. I said, no, you've got to call, because apparently they sold your book. So, I'm whispering on the phone, hi, this is true. So, that's absolutely the truth. But I think I got paid $15,000 for 2 books, which is not going to pay the bills. So I was 7 books into my published career before I could quit these other jobs. It takes a while. I'm going to go back there and then here, sir. Yes.
For the City trilogy, how beholden did you feel you needed to be to the Greek stories,
Yeah.
or the real dirty history of Rhode Island organized crime? I mean, did you feel
Very beholden.
you're trying to shoehorn one or the other? Or
Yeah. Listen, I stayed pretty faithful to the Aeneid, the Odyssey, the Iliad, all of those. Every character in these three books has an analogous character in those classics, and every incident that happens has an analogous incident, which is why it took 30 damn years to write the thing, right? Because, I couldn't figure out what the incidents were supposed to be, So, in terms of Rhode Island crime history, that didn't take much research. Walk out the door, It's funny, I was at a baseball game just last summer, and a guy approached me. We're talking about baseball, and it turns out we knew a lot of the same mob guys, and it's that kind of state. So it's not directly analogous to crime history in Rhode Island, but most of those things happened. Yes, sir.
I'm just curious, in your mind, what was the book that put you over the hump in terms of public acceptance? When did you really think, okay, I've got this?
Probably Cartel. Sort of a combination between Cartel and Savages because of the movie, right? Cartel came out and Chapo Guzman escaped from prison the next day. I was on a book tour. I was down in D.C. and I wake up in the morning, my phone's blowing up. Like, what's this? And it's everybody and their dog wanting to ask me about Chapo Guzman. My publisher literally accused my agent of arranging Guzman's escape from prison. So I think that was the book that kind of broke it open for me, I guess. And then Savages because of the film. Yes.
I mean, as a Knicks fan, I feel entitled to ask a second question.
As a Knicks fan, just out of sympathy, I'm going to let you.
Perfect segue into that. How do you feel about your stories since, transitioning into a new medium, movies, TV, like?
Yeah, good. What can I tell you? I love movies and TV. Listen, I've been very lucky, man, right? And particularly lately, these three books are headed for the films with Austin Butler playing Randy.
Really?
Yeah, cool. Which I love. It's a great choice. He's a good guy, smart guy, very down to earth. It's nice when you like the person who's playing the main character. What else?
Is that TV or movie?
A movie, feature film. Crime 101, which is a novella of mine, is headed for the, start shooting this summer with Pablo Pascal and Chris Hemsworth. Yes, sir.
Why not Frankie Machine? That's
Frankie
like
Machine, thank you. Do you all know the story? Can I tell you a quick
Yeah,
story
go
about
ahead.
Frankie Machine? I'm sitting at home in my office in my little town in California one day, and the phone rings and I answer it, and I hear the following. Hi, Don, this is Bobby De Niro. And I said, hi, Bobby, this is Tinkerbell, because I thought it was some goofy friend of mine screwing me around. It was De Niro. Wants to do Frankie Machine with Martin Scorsese. So they're way down the road. They're location scouting, and a wonderful screenwriter named Eric Roth sends De Niro a nonfiction book called You Paint Houses, Don't You? About a hitman. De Niro and Scorsese like that better than Frankie Machine and end up making The Irishman. No hard feelings, all nice people. However, funny how life works. Have you all seen a TV show called The Bear?
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. So that guy, Chris Storer, after he finishes filming season 3 of The Bear, which I can't wait to see, is going to make Frankie Machine. That's
Great.
He's also the lead for the Springsteen movie.
Yes, correct. Yep. So yeah, it's all good, and there are other projects that are out there. I won't bore you with all of them, but you asked the question. Actually, yeah, I've been very lucky with that. Very lucky with that. Listen, I feel good about it. You have to realize as a novelist that they are two different media, right? They're two different breeds of cat with very different needs. And so you can't be too rigid, you know? You have to understand that one is flat and there's no time factor, and the other is vertical and is constantly moving, right? And that alone is going to cause changes, compression, and all kinds of things. I am not one of those novelists who looks down at screenwriters. I think it's an extremely difficult art, particularly adaptation, you know? And so I admire it. And there have been times just recently, in fact, with Crime 101, where I like the screenplay better than I like the novella. And I wrote the novella. What can I say? Just the truth. I don't know how we're doing for time here.
A couple more minutes.
A couple of more minutes. Is there another? Yes, sir.
In terms of what you're going to be doing next, I'm just wondering, can you talk specifically about what you're going to be doing in terms of activism or?
Yeah. Well, it's a matter of what we're going to keep doing. You know, I've been doing this since about 2015. Again, you can do the math. But I think things will intensify as things intensify. So it's a matter of keep on keeping on, keep putting on the pressure, you know, until we win.
How are you going to do that exactly? I mean,
Well, listen.
that's all kind of too.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I do a lot on what used to be Twitter is now X, so kind of daily commentary on what's going on. Now look, our videos that we made, that Shane and I have made, my agent and friend and co-conspirator, have had over 300 million views. That's mind-boggling to me. 15 million just on the last 3 videos. We just put out an extraordinarily nasty video about Trump, which I'm very proud of. It's not as ugly as I can be. Wait. And so keep doing that. Keep reaching people. Keep encouraging the base to vote, the swing voters to come over to the right side. I got a call from an old Trump supporter a few weeks ago saying, hey, old rancher, say, hey, Don, I'm done with Trump.
Oh.
That kind of
At least.
thing. You know, it can have its effect.
Are the videos on X?
Yes. Yep. Yes, sir.
I love your books.
Thank you,
They're
sir.
all fantastic. They've been eye-opening on your activism. I love the direction you're going. Have you ever met the man and psychologically diagnosed what's going on between his ears? Because I'd love to read a book about that.
Met what man?
Mr. Trump.
No.
Yeah. I'd love for somebody to help me understand what's going on there.
Look, the submarine has yet to be invented that can plumb the depths of Donald Trump's ignorance. You know, he's a deeply stupid man with what I would describe as feral cunning. But let's not underestimate this. Let's understand this is a serious threat. It could happen again, right? We can't do what we did in 2016 and sit back and sit in our hands. And I would say to those people who are on the fence, that fence can become your prison if you don't get off. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
And I think I could see the hook coming.
Just feel bad getting away from the political question, but when you write, and you talked a little bit about struggling in the second book in the series, but how do you handle writer's block if you ever get it, or do you?
Here's what I think writer's block is, sir. I think it's the attempt to write perfectly on the first draft, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
Can't do it, but people try it, and then what happens is you go, oh my God, it's not working, and you lock up. What I tell people who are suffering from writer's block is write anything. Anything. Type a jelly jar label. Anything. Just get the fingers moving. Type anything. Copy someone else's book for half an hour or whatever. You'll get over that writer's block. But realize you can't write perfectly on the first draft. Unless you're Jack Kerouac, and even then I'd argue that that's the case. I think there was one more question. I acknowledge a gentleman back here, and then we're going to quit.
Okay, the stupid fanboy question.
Okay.
What's your favorite of your titles?
What's my favorite of my titles? So
I'm sure
can't
you-
answer that. It's like talking about your kids. I mean, I only have one kid, so I can't really make that analogy work. But I don't know. Listen, here's my glib answer, but kind of serious, really. It should always be the book you're working on. Always be in love with the woman you're dancing with, sir.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Just a reminder, if you do want to have your book signed, just line up on that side of the room over there. You can purchase them ahead of time, or you can purchase them on your way out. Just make sure you do pay for them. We really appreciate it. If you have any other questions or if you pre-ordered anything, check with me. And if you want anything personalized, I'm going to come along the line and write that all down for you. So just that it.
Let's see you guys first. I love the